Let's talk about cover letters. If you went to business school or are going through recruitment right now for any job, you definitely know that these two words are a source of so much stress and anxiety, but they don't have to be. Today, I'm going to be talking about the cover letter, which is often something that is overlooked when applying for jobs and going through recruitment. It is true that nowadays, less and less companies are asking for cover letters when you apply, just because they've replaced them with other forms of assessment, whether it be some sort of aptitude tests, skill tests, and whatnot. But where there are cover letters explicitly required, you should assume and know that people do read through them. And it's important to have a well-crafted, balanced cover letter. So before we dive into the content of the perfect cover letter and how to write it, it's first important to understand what a cover letter actually is. And you'd be surprised how many people get this wrong and many people approach it from the wrong direction. So from my experience, the cover letter has actually two key components or has two key things that make it unique. The first is that it's an opportunity to tell your story. The cover letter adds substance to your application and gives you an opportunity to, explain who you are, where you came from, or really what excites you. The second most important part of a cover letter is that it's personalized. It's an opportunity to directly interact with a company on a more personal note, share some of your personal stories and why your beliefs and values align with a certain company, job, position, whatever you may be applying for. There's one thing that a cover letter is not. And that is, it is not a summary of your resume. Please just engrave this in your head that it is not a regurgitation of your resume. If they wanted to look at where you went to school, like what jobs you've had in the past, or, any of these other things, they can scroll to the next page and look at your resume. Instead, the cover letter is an extension to your resume, not a regurgitation of your resume. So please keep that in mind. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's actually dive into how to write the perfect cover letter. And to do so, I'll be breaking it up into 4 key sections. And the first is the header. So when it comes to the header, it should be clean and concise. The formatting should be standardized, and that includes text, fonts, and spacing. Now, there are many different ways of formatting the header, but here's just a simple approach that I take, which is having my name in big letters at the top, my key contact information, so that is email, phone number, and LinkedIn. Always, always, always include these 3 things. So after the header, you'd always want to include the date, and then you want to include the contact name of the recruiter, their position, the company name, and then have a subject that's clean and concise. So what I like to do is just have the title of the position I'm applying for. That's it. So if I was applying for like a summer analyst role, it would just be summer analyst, in this division. One thing that you really want to do here is find out who the recruiter is and find a specific person to address the cover letter to. Trust me, it makes a world of a difference. I've had a job in the past where my manager told me that one of the reasons she actually hired me was because I took the time to research her, address the cover letter to her, and add a sense of personalization. So take that and make sure to find out the name of the recruiter. Sometimes there could be many different people on the recruitment team. You can address it to one or whoever you've talked to. If for some case you feel uncomfortable or you can't really find who the recruiter is, it's perfectly okay to then just write, dear blank company, talent acquisition team, or recruitment team, or whatnot. So let's move on to the introduction component. So a couple of things to point out here. The number one thing that I feel really can differentiate you is if you come up with a hook. And a hook is essentially something that really reels someone in and draws their attention. If you think about a book you've read, a YouTube video you watched, or anything, you notice how the first couple pages of a book or the first seconds of a YouTube video are really there to draw your attention in and reel you in. And sometimes the other way around, where if you see something and you saw the first little bit is kind of boring, you'll be less enticed to read through the whole thing. So apply that concept to your cover letter as well. Having the first sentence be something unique, something special, that something just stands out right away will help make sure that you stand out as an applicant and entice the person who's reading it to continue to read through. And to do that, be as creative as possible, think outside of the box. So an example I have over here is being born in a developing country and having traveled extensively across 3 continents. I've experienced firsthand the growth of technology and its dynamic impact on people's lives. So what I would do is spend a lot of time actually developing this hook and, write different variations and see what sticks and run it by someone and see if it catches their attention. Then in the second or third sentence, I would give a quick refresher of how I interacted with this company or where, I met someone at the company or how I heard of it. And this can be in the form of many different things, but over here on the screen, you'll see an example. And then to summarize it, I like to give an overview of what groups of skills I have or what makes me a great candidate for that position. So as you can see, it's very short and concise, but at the same time, it's very personable and it draws someone's attention in. One thing that may be controversial and stir up a bit of opinion is that I don't like to mention my name, program details, or specialization in the first paragraph of my cover letter or in my cover letter at all. The reason being is that this is redundant information. First of all, they know your name. Second of all, if they looked at your resume, they know what school you went to, they know what you specialized in, they know all that information. So why do you need to list it again? Instead, you can spend that, character limit or words refining and telling your story rather than regurgitating information that is already there. So now that brings us to the body of the cover letter. I've realized that the best approach is creating separate taglines with relevant skills and having them as like subheadings within your body. And I would try to stick to 2 if you need 3. And essentially what these are 2 to 3 word sentences or phrases that correlate to a skill. So for example, you'll see over here, innovative thinker or passionate leader or creative problem solver or service-minded. There's so many different variations you can come up with. So once you find these for you, you can write how these apply to you. So for example, if you look on my example, the innovative thinker, I talk about my experience in a case competition that I did. I go into, how I worked with a team and the ideas we came up with. So I specifically call out, the idea was unconventional. It included this, this, and this. And then I summarize it by saying, this competition exemplified my ability to combine a structured approach with a creative perspective, which is a powerful skill I hope to bring with me and apply successfully within a role at the firm. So the last sentence of these paragraphs should always tie back to the bigger picture as to how it will tie in within the company, within the position you're applying for. So once again, I typically do 2 to 3, and you can change these up actually depending on the job you're applying for. The key thing over here is to really highlight only your key experiences and emphasize the result component of it and what you learned from it. So set up what it was, what you did, how you did it, and how that exemplifies or demonstrates the skill that you have. And lastly, we'll be moving on to the conclusion of the cover letter. So over here, what you want to do is briefly summarize all of the different subheadings from above. So essentially what I like to say is that I'm confident that my skill number 1, skill number 2, skill number 3 will be a valuable asset within this team at this company. What you want to do is have a call to action at the end. And this is typically in the form of saying, I welcome the opportunity to further discuss my experiences and my interest in this position. And then you end off by thanking the person for their consideration of the application. So that brings me kind of to the end of the actual content of the cover letter. And there are a couple of things I want to point out, with the first being that this is definitely not something that's set in stone. It's very variable. You can change it however you want. If you like something, don't like something, move it around. This is just a guideline and something that I've used in my past that's really helped me. So yeah, feel free to change it up. There's no one right way to do it, but this is just what's worked for me from my experience and what I've learned from a lot of different people. The second thing is to make sure that you make your cover letter personalized. What you should be doing is that if a company is asking for a cover letter, always think that they're reading it. And if they're reading it, then you want to make sure that it is a good cover letter and is personalized towards the company that you're applying for. And lastly, be creative and use it as a way to share your story, and don't think of it as a summary of your resume, as I pointed out earlier. So in short, cover letters are a very unique tool and really important part of getting your next internship, your next job, or, advancing your career. And just by spending some time and thinking about this and giving some effort, you'll be able to craft a cover letter that really draws attention and adds to your application. As always, if there's any questions that you have or, any comments you have, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Give this video a like, and I'll see you next time.